Hello, we're back.
Hi.
I'm Margaret and Sarah, and we're here to talk about misconceptions about the emotional support domain and share a little bit with you about each one of those dimensions. But I'd like to start with an overview of emotional support, the domain, and how that's important for children, and just chime in. So emotional support is really about how teachers help children feel connected and feel safe in a classroom so that the time that we spend with them is of more value because they're willing to take risks and try things out. We really look at how teachers connect with them personally, develop those relationships so that in those interactions they can build from that one-to-one feeling of understanding and makes kids want to come to school.
Right, exactly. And as we all know, the kids who walk into the school in the morning and they're ready to go and they're really happy, they're going to be playing with their friends, they're going to be engaging in the activity, they're available for learning. And the child who's really afraid and maybe hanging on his mother's or his grandpa's leg as he comes into school isn't going to be available to learn in the same way. So,
Right.
Yep.
So good. Okay, so we're going to start with positive climate. And so we talked briefly about this before we filmed this. And some of the places where people get mixed up a little bit on positive climate can be respect.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and so when we think about respect, as you know from looking at the manual, the things we look at are eye contact, warm, calm voice, respectful language, and cooperation and sharing. And so what's important to think about here, and I trust that everybody knows it, so this is really a reiteration, is that sometimes there are people who think about respect in that regard perspective. So when the kids say, do it again, that was fun, and the teacher does it again, that really is that flexibility piece, following children's lead that we look at in regard. And when I think about respect, I honestly think about social niceties, making that eye contact, having that voice, using people's names, saying please and thank you. And so it's just a misconception that sometimes we need to help people work around.
Sure, because if you think about somebody you have a relationship with or an emotional connection, you would show them respect. You would nod your head when they're speaking to you, give them eye contact. You would use polite language. You would turn your body towards them when you're speaking to them. So that's just one little piece of positive climate that we thought you might want to think about. So we move on to negative climate. And negative climate is, I think, one of the things that people struggle with is the dimension definition, which talks about the level of expressed negativity, but not just what we're seeing, but how often are we seeing it, and what's the depth to that, the frequency, or does it really escalate, or is it sustained?
Right, exactly. And so I think that is an important thing for people to consider, particularly when they're thinking about severe negativity. And as we know that when we're looking at the face page of the manual, that there is no such thing as low-range severe negativity, and there's no such thing as mid-range negativity. You either have severe negativity or you don't. And sometimes people are quick to overcode negativity because they see things that are unpleasant, that are negative, and they don't like it, and so they just want to automatically bump up that score. And a couple things to think about are, first of all, some of the things we see in preschool classroom. Kids shove each other, pinch each other,
Peer negativity.
Peer negativity, yeah, the peer-to-peer negativity, that really fits under peer aggression in the negative affect indicator. But when we're thinking about severe negativity, we're really thinking about that sustained victimization or bullying. And I'm actually turning to page 31 in the pre-K manual, and where it says, examples of severe negativity are very rare, but include sustained victimization or bullying of students, a teacher hitting a student, or students physically fighting with each other. And so, again, it's that same idea of that frequency and that depth. And there's a very difference from there's a different connotation between a teacher threatening one child 3 times versus consistently being on that child's case.
Singling somebody out.
Singling someone out, and it's really nonstop and quite unpleasant throughout our observation period.
Yeah, and the last thing I'd say about expression of negativity is something you can see. It's palatable.
Yeah,
it's,
exactly.
You know it when you see it. So that's just something to keep an eye out for, is the difference between severe negativity and the absence of it.
Right.
Okay. So moving on to teacher sensitivity. This is important dimension because it's really not about how nice the teacher is, but really what a good noticer that teacher is. And what's important also about this dimension is that that teacher is aware and responsive to children's cues for or needs, not just academic needs, but also emotional needs.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it does that. Is that teacher aware in the moment, looking around the classroom, seeing what's going on in that classroom, and noticing when children need help? And sometimes that can be overt or covert bids for attention. Right. And then if that teacher sees that, what's the response? Right. So the responsiveness is connected to the awareness. You can't always respond ahead of time if you like anticipate problems, but sometimes you have to respond after the fact. And then looking at that response, and is that response is it contingent? Does it help? And does the teacher communicate that that problem is important enough to her to help?
Right.
And did it work? A lot of times you'll see a teacher aware of something, respond to something, try to help the child, but it does not solve the problem. Then we know that then it's not as effective.
Right. And we can see that because the children, either the problem continues if two peers are having a dispute about something, or the child keeps coming back to the teacher over and over again with the same problem. And so in that case, the problem hasn't been effectively addressed, even though the teacher, as Mary Margaret said, was aware and responsive.
Right. And that comes to mind, that training video where the little boy is coming over to the ramps, the car ride where the cars are going down the ramps, and he wants to play, and the teacher's so nice, and she takes him away, and she redirects and tries to help him find something else, and he just keeps coming back.
Right.
So she was very aware, she was very responsive, but she did not address the problem.
Right.
Okay. So regard is an important, well, they're all important. It's just particularly important to mention for children, I think, around emotional support. If you think about how these all fit into being emotionally supportive. And that is really a teacher intentionally trying to find out what a child's perspective is, to regard. So when you regard somebody's perspective, you care about that, you notice that, you try to find out where they're coming from and what interests them, because you can see where that would really build on all interactions.
Right.
And trying to find ways to get kids to tell you what they're interested in can be done through student expression. And I like the way you describe that.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because sometimes people hear just some back and forth exchanges between the teacher and the children, and they just assume that's student expression. But we really have to step back and listen and find what are those exchanges about. If the exchange is really just a question and answer session, that's not student expression, because in student expression, again, we're in regard. So it's really, is the teacher interested? How is she following their leads? And at that high range for student expression, the teacher's genuinely interested in how the children see the world. And so she's asking questions and she's following up contingently to give children that opportunity to really explain their thinking and what their world
Which is following their lead, right?
Which is following
their lead.
and
being flexible within that conversation.
Exactly.
And a lot of people sometimes think if you hear the kids talking, that's student talk, and that is a behavioral marker, but that's not the same as students talking to express themselves and tell what their perspective is. So I think that's an important piece of regard to think about.
I agree.
All right. So we kind of took you through a whirlwind emotional support. Our next vlog will be on classroom organization, and then hopefully to follow up with some on instructional support. So we hope you enjoyed it. Like us and share.
Thanks for listening.
Yep. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
We changed clothes.
We couldn't help it.
Did you?
I said it as a joke, and she said, okay.